About every 10 years, 5 or 10, give or take, I have to address this particular problem, and I've done it over and over. And it got a little discouraging because I think, well, I just told everybody about this subject. But we have to be realistic and realize that therapists grow older like I do, and then somebody else comes along and finishes school, and then they're onto the marketplace, and then they're confronted with the private sector selling everything they can from A to Z. And so it becomes a necessity. And sometimes I have to remind even our own people what this means and what it connotates and what they're really doing. And I'm talking about the word pill. Pill is that fascinating phenomenon that seems to make the public think that all they have to do is rip off a big layer of skin and voila, you're young and flawless again with no pigmentation, no nothing. Well, that's not really how it works. And I've never liked the word. And most of you that have known me over the last 30, 40 years, 50 years, some of you, know that I hate that word. Now, do I hate the reason behind it? No, I don't, obviously. I just hate the misuse of the word. Like the latest peel is the absolute finito of everything. When in fact, and I'll describe to you exactly how I see it, it's just the opening of the door for the real work. It has nothing to do with the end result or the end job. And we've been confronted by every kind you can possibly think of under the sun. There was the blue peel. There was the green peel. There was the herbal peel. There was one doctor, well, I'm not going to say the name, German doctor. And actually, I got to know the old gal before she passed away, and she was quite nice. And she actually followed my work and stood up at a plastic surgery center once in Germany and said, "This boy knows what he's talking about." But her peel showed this hideously almost deformed woman, like one of the people out of Game of Thrones, the gray people. One side of her face, nobody would even look like that unless they had ichthyosis, leprosy, and squamous tumors all at the same time. And then the other side of the face was flawless and youthful, ready to go on film as a movie star. And it was all about herbs and things like that. So there are many ways to do this, but let's wipe out the word and talk about what it means. Now, the word peel is a remove system. And as you know, DMK is remove, rebuild, most important really, remove, rebuild, protect, and maintain. See, I had a senior moment there for a second. Forgot my own world famous mantra. So what are we removing? Well, as I've showed you many, many times, we'll do a quick little illustration here. This is the epidermis, dermis, subcutaneous, and everything else in between. Then we have two vital glands here. We have the sebaceous gland, sometimes with the hair follicle, sometimes not. And we have the sudoriferous gland, the SNS twins, S and S, sebaceous sudoriferous. And this guy, or whatever, supplies water. And this guy supplies oil. The oil is highly fractionated. It's actually a composition of broken down cells into a lipid form. And it rises up whenever we're hot and angry, whenever we're sexually excited, or automatically when we're young, every 2-3 hours. And at the same time, this one over here, sebaceous, which is water, basically, a lot of chemicals in it, but it comes up too, and together they form the acid mantle on top of the skin. The acid mantle, which has many jobs. It keeps a lipid-water ratio, so the skin won't look cracky and dried out. It's slightly antibiotic. It is a defense mechanism, and it keeps our skin supple and fresh, as in moisturize. Now, the word moisturize is another misnomer. You've heard me talk about this. You've seen me write about it 100,000 million times. It actually was a word invented in 1960s by a New York advertising company to sell beauty creams. And it was clever, but what the old ladies that just loved these moisturizers that were new on the market, what they loved about it is when they washed their face and it felt dry and tacky and stretched. They would put these moisturizers on and it would suddenly relax and feel normal. Well, the dry and stretched effect is coming from the fact that dead cells, once they're on the surface and they die, they don't always come off. In fact, they build up over a period of time. We call that redundant cuticle or excess corneum or dead cells. And so when you wash your face and you don't put anything on it, they're smaller than the living cells underneath. And so they kind of stretch and they're still attached and they stretch and you feel, oh, so dry and tight. And so you slap on a cream and that grease releases that tension. So you're really not moisturized, you're greased. And all these old ladies running around greased. And of course, how would they get rid of that when they're out in public or dining and they put a lot of makeup on and still there's grease? Well, they powder it down to cut the shine. And so it was a grease powder. It was a vicious cycle. So the thing was thought to me when I was a young scientist, the first thing I thought was, well, let's see if we can replicate that acid mantle, which I did. My very first formula was CBE. And I had to get as close to natural sebum as possible, which meant fractionated oils, and we won't go into that in this session, but most of you have been trained on what distal fractionation means, micellized, and water. And so we have CBE for that part, and we have urban mineral mist for the sudoriferous. And I tried to chemically come as close to that as possible with a sweat, basically. It didn't smell. Of course, sweat only smells when bacteria is present. But anyway, so that's the history of how our skin actually works from the time we're born and blah, blah, blah. So over the years, through whatever reason, whether it be environmental attack or excess solar damage or being stuffed in an office room for hours at a time with not much humidity in the air, for whatever reason, sometimes these cells, when they ascend to the surface, and as they get closer, and we're talking about the new cells now, the baby ones that come up all the time, and they get up here, and normally they're supposed to naturally exfoliate to an extent. We need some as part of our defense barrier, but we don't need a big pileup. And that's what happens is through incorrect skincare at home or whatever, all of these variables we talked about, they build up over a period of time, thicker and thicker and thicker. And then, of course, in the mirror, the cracks start to appear in this because it is dead. And these secretions are backed up. The sebaceous oil that's in this kind of little bag here, it kind of reservoirs and reservoirs and reservoirs because it can't go out naturally. It just kind of seeps a little bit. Sometimes it'll go to the nose because that's where the skin is flattest and tightest to the face or the forehead. And all of a sudden it'll burst out. And you'll have all kinds of greasy forehead and nose, and yet nothing bad here. And of course, the girl at the department store and the cosmetic counter says, oh, you've got a T-zone. We got to deal with that T-zone. There's no such thing as a T-zone. It's just sebaceous oil trying to flow naturally, and it can't. It's backed up with redundant cuticles, so it comes out thinnest and tightest place it can be on the face. So why have a whole bunch of extra products for that? It's ridiculous. Anyway, so common sense tells, and this can back up too, so you become water dry or transepidermal water loss. All right, so how do we address it? Well, the first thing we do is remove all that cuticle. And that's where the dread word peel comes in. Remove. And for centuries, back into even Egyptian times, they were using resins and honey. Let honey dry and it will pick up a lot of dead cells. Resins of all kinds. They didn't know much about the pH factor of chemistry as we do now, but they would experiment with different wines and acidic products, tomato mass, all kinds of things. And they all kind of did something, because it's all about pH. Now, it's not about strength of ingredient. We'll get into that in a second, but it's about pH. Simple. All right. So yeah, we know that. So we have to remove, and we have many, many ways to remove. Sometimes we want to play the piano. like my piano teacher teaches me at home, AJ, on the pH scale, okay? So when you put an acid on the skin, I don't care what kind of acid it is, we have so many choices. We have pyruvic, malic, salicylic. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on and on and on. We even have phenol, which I used to love, but of course, certain regulatory factions and different governments around the world said, it is forbidden. So there went my phenol. Probably wanted to look at it as the drug later on. I don't know why they do what they do. And you have croton oil, and now phenol and croton oil at 99% was mixed together for doctors for the old-fashioned big medical peel. And I think that medical peel days, it was very big in the 50s and 60s. Every society woman, every woman desperately trying to be young, every movie star, and even a lot of men, and they'd slap on these caustic acids, and they would then tape, if they were doing it correctly, some didn't, they would tape everybody up with medical tape, and they would have to be sequestered in that room for 3 days, swollen like, a watermelon. And then the tapes would be taken off, and underneath all of the epidermis would have been reduced to a weeping, blistering, of a lot of edema and erythema mess. And they would take a orangey brown, sort of like somebody we know in the news a lot, orangey type powder, bronzer, and slap it on. And that would pick up the seepage, and they had to do that for 12 days in that room, or some would do it at home. And it would turn into this big cookie crust-like thing. It looked like an orange cookie monster, ginger cookie. And then they would put a special exfoliant lubricant on, mostly Crisco, any kind of lard. And they would start slapping that on for a couple of more days, and then hot soaks with water, and then more grease and hot soaks. And this crust, it was called the Eshar crust, would start to drop away. And voila! No wrinkles, no pigmentation either, because it killed off all the melanocytes. So you could always tell these women and men that have had these peels by the pallor. It was like a ghostly, almost plastic looking, almost fake. And of course, a lot of the older ladies didn't mind because, oh, my wrinkles are gone and my skin is tightened up with a shock tightening, and I can wear makeup and nobody will notice. And they did. There's always a line of demarcation here because for some reason, these yo-yos are always afraid to go into the neck, because the structure of the tissue is somewhat different than the facial. So anyway, and actually I did a few of these. I have to admit it. I'm guilty. Lock me up. But back in Chicago days at my clinic on Oak Street, I had Dr., I forget his name, brilliant Filipino doctor, Augustin, I forget his last name, anyway, nice guy. And he would come in and we would do this, but we were nice enough to do a anesthetic, twilight, so they wouldn't scream. Can you imagine? Although the sensory ganglia nerve endings would be so shocked by that volume of acid percentage that would deaden it for a while. But later, woo! So we would do those, and he and I would look at each other after each one, and I'd say, and I was doing my enzyme treatments then too. That's probably what saved me. Any damage that could have come, because damage can come from that kind of attack. But we kept saying to each other, Danné, Alberto Augustin, yeah. I said, Roberto, can't we do something different? He goes, why don't you come up with something? He said, this is very traumatic. And I just sensed this. And most plastic surgeons did. But that's all they had to offer after a facelift or whatever type of facial surgery to get rid of those deep, glycated lines was this caustic peel. And what it was really doing was blasting the hell out of the epidermis, burning the hell out of the epidermis. And the result was a healing mode, okay? So that's what acid does. Now, if you come a little bit more up the pH scale to around 2.8, 3, 3.5, sometimes 3.8, stay under 4, because at 4, everything starts to turn to alkaline salts, which is, you might as well be salting a ham. When you do that to this corneum, what it does is it hardens all of those little tiny dead cells, even smaller and harder than what they are. And then they kind of become very brittle and break away from the underlying fresh epidermis. Okay, that's fine. We love that. We do that all day long, all day. Okay, now let's say we have other issues in the skin, acne vulgaris with lots of vellus hair, all kinds of these kind of things. Well, we wouldn't want to do that. We wouldn't want to go into an acid mode. We want to go down or up to an alkaline mode. And when you alkaline something, you do just the opposite. You soften everything, all the keratin, all the protein, everything, the hair, everything, anything that's a protein base or involves proteins will soften and desquamate, okay? And detach from the skin. So those are the modalities, basically, that DMK uses for remove. Now we have other little things too. We have the Prozyme, which is an enzymatic removal system. Crude meat-eating enzymes like the Pac-Man. I don't know if anybody knows what Pac-Man is anymore, but and that's one type of removal. Probably the calmest type that anybody could use without a lot of trauma. It's an option. We have so many options. That's why I don't believe some of this advertising that we're encountering lately. And then we have quick peel. Quick peel is fast because it coats over the dead cell buildup. It also has a rubefshin in it. Rubefshin in chemical speak means to create heat, Falschheit, as they say in Germany, in the skin. Open up the capillary valves, flush the skin through, getting toxins away from the side of the cells, bringing fresh oxygen to the mitochondria, which is that battery pack that keeps that little cell going. All right? So we have that option. Now, to be honest with you, why would anybody buy any kind of other peel in the world when they have alkaline wash, if they're trained in alkaline wash? And it does take special training, so everybody doesn't have it, but for those that do. Because you can desquamate more dead cells in 3-4 minutes with alkaline wash than any other kind of so-called new peel in the world. Now, there's nothing new about any of the removal keratolytic type ingredients that go into peels. Nothing new. I have access to everything. And if I had to listen to everybody or follow every trend, and trends come and go, we're going through a peel trend right now, that's why I'm doing this video. Yeah, I could make them all day long, except why would I? Why would I do that? It's not cost effective, it's stupid. I have choices when I formulate, and I go seriously through each type of keratolytic. And I have some therapists say, oh, I just love malic acid. Oh, I just love pyruvate. Like, they're new. They're not new. I'm aware of all of them. My early days of formulating our Pro Alpha 1 and 2, I went through every possible AHA and BHA, which is basically salicylic acid, to come up with what I thought would be the best, most direct, most effective. I'm not thinking a lot about gentle. You know, I see some of these peels being sold to our people that say, a gentler, why would we want to be gentle? We're professionals. You are highly trained, most of you DMK people. I'm so embarrassed by this because I'll see some of our top people. I actually saw one person do this weird peel on Facebook. Now, we'll get down to this in a minute. But I can do anything with any kind of keratolytic known to man. And we're coming across some new ones that have not been used before out of the Ayurveda sciences and botanics, which is exciting. But still, they're doing the same thing. They're all working on a detachment modality, infused with a pH that's lower, and in the case of quick peel, heat. So we got that going. Now, we often said, and I think we should say it more, and I think it should be part of our training. I really do. I want our account managers and educators all over the world to say this. And I know some of you are. I'm not just attacking anybody, but obviously a lot are not. I don't care what a DMK therapist buys. We can't stop people from buying shiny new objects. They'll pop up all the time. Millions of dollars are spent on these items. Endless table loads of Korean people are sitting there poring over formulations and what can we use to get the Americans to buy? This is just part of the industry. and it will always be with us, always. And I'm aware that you're confronted by this every day. After all, a lot of money is spent on getting your attention. So shiny new objects are shiny new objects, and they're nice. How many have I bought? We're not talking just about skin now. We're talking about cars, anything that I have bought, even online, that came and I'm disappointed. That's the risk you take. So I'm saying you're going to buy whatever you want to buy. That's fine. Can't stop you. But what I can say is please do not use any of these with DMK protocols. And there's three big reasons why. Number one reason, the chemical negation. You could be using something that was sort of innocuous, not even that bad on its own, but it's not chemically attuned, especially to our enzyme treatments, which are very difficult to produce, very fragile. We're talking about amino acids and things that are very fragile in proteins. It could negate that, even the touch of it. You know, you might put some new pale on and wipe it all off and then start the enzyme one. You've already denigrated a good third of enzyme one. I know you don't think you are. You think, oh, the results are so great, because you're paying attention to what you're doing as normal. So for that reason alone, it should be a no-no, okay? Number two, it's not necessary. You have so many choices of cuticle removal that why would you invest and waste your money on something else and confuse your patient or client? You know, and confuse people out there in DMK land that assiduously watch your Facebook presentations and videos, which we have a lot, and most of them are just great. I'm so thrilled. You have no idea how that makes me feel. But then you're slapping something else in. Very confusing. It dilutes your message. It dilutes your profession, and it dilutes all of the intensive training that you've had to do to get where you are with us. And trust me, our training is ongoing, as you know. It's all what we are. It's our best. So for that reason alone, that second reason, it's a no-no. Third reason is lawsuit city. Now let's say this woman or man that you're slapping this new peel on because, geez, everybody's talking about it. It's bleaching skin out in 5 minutes. Fabulous. Made in Spain even. Made in Spain. Well, what if something happens? Through no fault of any of the DMK tools or products, because you've done them before on this person, and they're great. But then suddenly you add this component and they blow up. Don't tell me this can't happen, because it has. Many times. They blow up. They go to a dermatologist. Oh, yes, you have a violent reaction with this product or whatever. Never have that again. Get a lawyer. He talks to the dermatologist. Oh, God, we have a big suit here. Let's go after this company. They're big. They're rich. So you're involved in a lawsuit because you won't escape. They'll come after us, too. It'll be a mess. And you guess what? At the end of the day, it'll never get into a court of law. These things never do. They never do. Shortly before the actual court date, the lawyers get together and they approach the client and they say, would you take $100,000 and shut up and go away? Even though they've been promised all along millions if we go to court. True. They'll take that's because that's more than they had in their pocket when they started. So, you know, it's a mess that we don't even want to get into. So I'm begging all of you wonderful, wonderful practitioners out there that work with my methodology and procedures not to mix and match. Use one thing if you want to try some new shiny object, but don't keep them on anything else. And do not, particularly the enzyme treatments, that is a bugbear that I don't even want to get involved with. So the word peel is really a misnomer. Doesn't mean anything. It means opening the door. Because after you get that redundant cuticle off your client's face, neck, butt, boobs, wherever, the whole body, then you really start to work inside the tissue where you have to keep living cells alive a little bit longer. That's what age management is. Or in the case of acne and dermatitis and that, you're bringing homeostasis into the skin so they don't continue suffering from these anomalies. All right? And how many of you have done this? Hundreds, thousands. Oh my God, I'm so thrilled when I see the posts on Facebook of the enormous triumphs that some of you wonderful therapists out there and doctors have done over the years. Makes me extremely proud. So when I get these alarms like, oh, so-and-so is doing this new peel. As a matter of fact, there's one product company, I used to name names because I don't care, but I won't this time. I think the poor lady's maybe no longer with us. I heard, I don't know yet. I know she sold her company 2011. But it was a South African therapist, attractive woman in her own sort of, I can't even go into that, but no, she was an attractive lady. She followed me all around because she's a big Sidesco examiner and all of that. So she was very proper, but still old school. Okay. And so she would follow me all around South Africa whenever I was there, attending all my lectures, taking copious notes and talking to me all the time. And whenever we showed up at Sidesco conferences around the world, she'd make a beeline for me right away. Hi, Danné, and how's it? And all this, and we'd be talking about everything. And what I didn't know is I was feeding her information. I did this with a South African doctor too. And that kind of made me mad. I don't mind sharing information. I do that. My general manager of DMK, Randy Larson, back in the old days would say, Danné, will you shut up? You tell everybody everything. Or you write everything down in your many articles. Don't you think these companies are looking and getting ideas? No, well, we have to share information. And I do think we have to share information. But if you're going to copy something, at least do it well. And so this woman went into her own range. I didn't pay much attention because I don't look at competition. I know all marketing people say, you got to see what everybody, no. When you're running a race to a goal and you stop for a second to see who's catching up with you or ahead of you, then you slow down and you don't reach it in time. So I don't care what they're doing. I care what's needed. The body is my lab, not what so-and-so is doing. I don't care. Everything in the world has come and gone, and I've seen it all come and go and come back again in new drag. But I don't put a timeline on anything. I put what the body does, what's needed to circumvent or change a bad chemical reaction in the body. What is the chemistry that's used at the cell level? And how does the cells respond? And that has no time. The only thing that has time is marketing. Think about that. But real science doesn't have any timeline. It's there. Now, sure, I'm always researching, looking for better ways, more efficacious ways to do what we already do, improve the tools in our kit. Some new things come to my attention. I hate being told to do something just because somebody else is doing it and selling it to clients. There's one country that has committed therapists to DMK. They don't do anything else. Then suddenly they're starting to do all kinds of pigment and peeling things because some company sells it to them. You can also buy it online. Go figure. I never could understand that. And it's loaded and loaded and loaded with illegal ingredients. I'm not saying horrible ingredients, although they kind of are over a long period of usage, bleaching components, but they're not, we can't use them. I don't like them anyway. But that was getting the so-called flash result, and these people were kept buying it. And of course, it annoyed this country's educational head, and it would annoy me too. It does annoy me. But then I was compelled to make something similar, better. And I didn't want to, but I did. And you know what? Got through a year or so fiddling around, unaware of some of the chemicals that were in that product I was supposed to do better, but and I thought, hey, that's what I'm fighting. I can't do it. Just forget it, So I made a vow to myself, don't pay any attention to what anybody else is doing. Do we need another peel? Because so many companies are selling DMK people new peels. We don't really need, but yes, there is another way which I hadn't thought of. And this is what happened. This is where my epiphanies come in, 3 o'clock in the morning on the toilet or laying in bed or whatever. Sometimes when you're not thinking and you're thinking of something else, boom, a light bulb goes off. So you know that I'm supposed to be the biofreeze king. Yes, I did create the still heavily selling topical analgesic biofreeze. Personally, I think my new formula, which we haven't put into big production yet, deep freeze, is better because after all, I did the first one. Hello. But I did that. And because I did a lot of research on cryotherapy. So I thought, well, now we've got thermogenics in the quick peel. That's the remove and the heat. Let's go the opposite end of the thermometer and do a cryo type removal system. And the more I thought about it and the different benefits and some of the new things I've come across as keratolytics that not many people have, and the combinations, I got more and more excited. So that one will be coming down the pike. Now, the last thing that, and I know nobody likes to hear me talk like this. In fact, my board of directors will hate this video, but too bad, it goes out. I've even heard that some of the longtime DMK therapists are bored. I'm so bored, I want something new. I want a new shiny object, I want something new. I go, bored. Okay, what does bored mean? I've spent 15 years, 12 years, 10 years, getting fabulous results. I posted them all over Facebook, I've got a great clientele. I'm always getting results. But I'm bored because I'm doing the same thing all the time. Well, that's number one, that's not quite true. Yes, you have the same tools we've added now and again. I mean, I'm not one of those companies that just has to put out a new product every 5 minutes to keep business going. That's not right. That sucks. That's phony. That's marketing. And that's why marketing departments and R&D classically in this business are always at loggerheads. I went to a big chemist convention, the first one up in Pittsburgh a few years ago, took some of my lab people. And I was shocked because, some of the best minds in cosmetics were there, R&D people, brilliant, and marketing people. And they were like, "Ream." And so many of the scientists, when we'd have coffee or drinks after, were complaining, oh, I could do this and I've got that, but marketing doesn't want me to. They want me to make this and that with a colored gold. And that's just classic in the business. You're gonna always have that. Fortunately, DMK controls its marketing, and there are good people that listen to me whilst looking around to see what everybody else is doing. They're the eyes in the dark, and we all get together and come up with something. But they know I do not make up a new product just, well, what are we gonna do to sell out a bunch of Christmas stuff? Or what are we gonna do for whatever? I just won't. I should. It makes money temporarily, but it's not our legacy. It's not what I do. It's not what people invested a great deal of their lives with me for, period. And you know who I'm talking about. You that have been with me for almost 50 years. So, yes, we've got a new pre-exfoliant out, and God knows what else it can do in other types of treatments. But guess what? You'll have fun coming up with different combinations with this too. So it's not always about a new product in hand. It's about a new approach to a skin anomaly. Debbie Dixon in Australia years ago was very good with this because I said the same thing to them that I'm saying to you now. I'm not going to bring out a new product every 5 minutes. Why don't you come up with new treatment combos? And they came up with names on them and everything, Byaku and the A-Lift, and it was great. That worked well. And that's kind of where we're at now. Now we have new things coming out. The long research years it's taken for Stemzyme will be launched in not too distant future. We finally got everything together. The makeup, DMKC, my great foundation, I have to brag about that because I'm so proud of that. I mean, wait till you see what we did on movie legend in Hollywood royalty, Julie Newmar, who at 88 looks about 40, 50. I mean, it's just amazing things that you can do. We've had problems with the packaging of that because it's such an unusual formula, but everything can be worked out once you have the goods. I don't give up easily. I'm very annoying to my partners sometimes. But so things are coming out that are new, but we won't do it just because it's a trend. And be careful of these peels, please, for those 3 reasons. It's not jealous. I'm not jealous of anything. As I told you, I can make anything. I have availability at my fingertips of every single ingredient and resource on the planet. Nothing can hide from me. Trust me on that. In fact, they come to me. In the old days, I couldn't even get into R&D at a company. But now, they're coming to me, waving their raw materials. Oh, please buy this. And we want you involved. You know why? Because they can go tell their other customers, oh, guess what? Danné Montague King buys from us. That's what happens when you become famous. Then you're valuable. They want to use you, should charge. And sometimes I do look at their stuff, and sometimes we do, work with it if they're a good company. So keep in mind those three aspects of what you're doing when you try a new thing on someone. Do it as a side treatment. I don't care. But do not do it with the DMK treatments. That's basically what I'm saying here. In fact, I saw, and I'm not going to mention her name because I love her dearly and she's quite glamorous. She is one of our Beverly Hills practitioners. And I actually saw a clip on Facebook where she's applying this South African thing. And I almost went through the ceiling. Now, to be honest, I didn't see her doing it with enzymes or anything. It was just by itself with the jar. And so I don't want to bark at these lovely people, especially her, because she's been through a hell of a lot during COVID. A lot of you have. And it just broke my heart. But I did secretly, but through the back door, go on Messenger and caution her. And I told her the story of my South African thing. And she started to laugh. She goes, oh, no. She says, I went to a seminar and they insisted that we had to buy 5 or some kind of deal at those seminars. And I'm trying to get rid of it. She says, I didn't particularly like it that much. She says, I'm just trying to get rid of it. That's why I'm showing it on Facebook to get my money back. And then this could be happening with other people too. I wouldn't know. But I'm telling you, think of the 3 levels of what you're doing when you're trying some new shiny object, and then do it elsewhere, or do it at another time, or whatever. Or don't do it at all, because I've just went through how everything works and what we can achieve with the tools we have in our hands. Simple as that. Thank you for your attention. If I'm coming off a little bit too volatile this morning, I am volatile. Would you have me any other way? Bye-bye.